Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our monthly safety update webinar with Safety Action. I'm Gary Rowe, the CEO of Safety Action, and I hope you're having a good month leading into the Christmas break. So let's just have a look at what I'd like to cover with you this morning in terms of topics, which we largely draw from the monthly safety newsletter, which I assume most of those here this morning will actually read, but we appreciate everyone's busy and you don't get time to read either every newsletter or bit of email that comes in, or you get distracted, or maybe you skimmed across it and you may not have all the points. Plus, we have the opportunity to answer any questions, and you can use the chat section. And if we don't have time during our allocated time this morning, and we often don't, we will undertake to get back to you. We often turn it into another newsletter article. So it actually becomes, if we think the question you ask is of interest and of value to others, then what we do is we actually turn it into a better explanation, more fulsome, and we can share it with others. And we'll do that for you as well. So let's look at what I'd like to cover today. So you will have noticed from the cover of our December newsletter, our feature article is Annoying People at Christmas, and I'll come back to that in a moment. The other one is disposing of old equipment. So whether you sell it or give it away, what are our requirements? Steve of our team has got a brief article on asbestos and bushfire risks, and I had a question a little while ago from a client and friend who sent me a draft procedure, and it's in the irrigation agricultural area, working near water, so they have lots of ditches, dams, trenches and all sorts of things, and waterways. And the first thing they had in the procedure was PPE, you've got to wear a life jacket. And I thought, I wonder whether is that the right way around, putting PPE as the first item, rather than what we would normally do is assess the risk and what are the most appropriate controls for that circumstance. I'll explain in a moment. And I just thought we'd let you know about our legislative update. We do quarterly legislative updates, and for those of you who are our retainer clients, you receive this free, and some other people also just subscribe purely to legislative updates. But we do try and include at least a summary of those in each of our monthly newsletters. So everyone can get for free through the monthly newsletters the updates, but some people choose to get a more comprehensive indication of what's happening in this area around Australia and New Zealand. So let's turn to our first topic for the day, and Christmas. What we do is we not only get together with close family and friends, but our close family and friends often have associated friends and members of family who you would not normally choose to spend time with. And for those that have ever attended one of our safety leadership training courses, which have largely been suspended this year due to all the COVID restrictions on training, but one of the questions we pose is, now just think about this for a moment, is there anyone at your work who you would not want to go on a holiday with? Now just think about that. Is there anyone you work with you would not want to go on a holiday with? And I can tell you that the vast majority of people, when we have face-to-face training, they're almost falling over each other in laughter, thinking, wow, there's so many people I would not want. Some people you're happy to work with, but you would definitely never want to go and spend that much time that you'd be on a holiday with them. So why is this? And how does this come about? So the first thing is we actually in the safety leadership training mentioned the 4-to-1 rule. And if somebody is not positive, if you don't have a positive reaction and experience with somebody at the ratio of 4-to-1, that's 4 positives for every negative reaction, you will not voluntarily spend time with that person. And of course the difference is at work we have to work with people we like as well as those we don't like. So now let's come to the social functions. So now you've been introduced to somebody you would not normally, you don't you don't have the same hobbies and interests, you may not have the same values and beliefs, they may be just annoying people to you. So let's have a look. So I thought I'd jot down some key tips that might help you get over with some of these people over the Christmas period and at other times as well. So number one, people will sometimes be mean, deliberately mean and curt with their comments. And some of these people are doing it designed to get a reaction. And so what we want to do is deny people the joy of your reaction. And one of the tips we give is think of yourself like a geologist, and you pick up a rock and you say, gee whiz, I've seen that type of rock many times before and I know what it is. Well, when you see those annoying and mean people, just smile quietly to yourself and say, I know that type of person, I have seen them before and I know how they behave. And strangely enough, just that level of awareness for yourself helps you overcome those annoying people. So there's a starting point. Another one is the spirit of conversation. And some people find others are annoying or they don't like them because they didn't show an interest in your discussion and your interest. And so the true spirit of conversation is not you controlling the conversation and not you controlling the subjects and the opinions, but actually ask questions of others. So when you're going to meet someone, don't drive in with everything you want to tell them about, but just think for a moment and look at their body language and ask them a question. Or why do they believe that? Why do they not believe it? Why do they like that? So whatever it is their hobby or interest is. So there you go. Stay alert for irrational behaviour. If you get absorbed into the discussion or into the environment and you don't realise that what's happening around you is irrational, then you're going to get sucked down that same vortex. So just recognising the irrational around you is your best defence. So there's another one. And of course, linked to that is emotions blind us to how we would normally control them. So when we're angry, what we're not able to do is to control our emotion and to recognise what's happening around us. So we're blinded by anger and strong emotions. So just look out for that. And some people say, well, you know, it's them, it's not me. And I would merely say, well, guess what? We're all on the spectrum of being annoying to others. It's just a question of where you are on that spectrum and what are your particular habits and behaviours and that either annoy other people or don't, or attract other people or not. And so just ask yourself, where am I on the spectrum? And maybe I have some habits and things that are not brilliant either. And a lot of it, I guess, you know, if we have our own clear values, this steers a lot of what we do in life, how we behave to ourselves, how we behave to others, the courtesies we show, respect, etc. The big mistake many of us make is we assume that strangers that we come across, like at a social function at Christmas, have or share the same values we do. And unfortunately, that's not true. And so that's not the worst thing in the world. The key thing is that we actually understand this and we recognise it. And so this is where that, which I've mentioned earlier about, well, let's ask them. Let's ask them questions. Why do they believe that? Why do they think that this is right or this is wrong, or what's happening in politics is correct or wrong or right? So just ask them why they believe it. You don't have to be annoying with the questions why, but this is how you actually get to understand what their values are, and just appreciate that not everyone's going to share the same values. We hope they share enough that they'll become, if they are close friends, and that's what close friends and family are about. We share enough of these values that you attract us to each other. And I really love a statement from which I've got in the newsletter, which is, I don't like that man. I must get to know him better. And when I came across this in a book recently, it just fascinated me, the statement. So I'll say it again. I can't resist it. I don't like that man. I must get to know him better. And this is from a book by Robert Greene, a famous author of a number of books, but bear with me, I can't remember his others to the top of my head. But what I can tell you is from the book The Laws of Human Nature, published in 2018, so a couple of years ago. And it's a great salutary comment that the more you don't like someone, the more he says, well, gee, it's a bit like the old statement, know your enemy and keep your enemies closer. But it's not about treating him as an enemy. It's getting to understand, why is it I don't like this person? What is it? I must get to know them better. I must understand how can they possibly believe those stupid things, or how can they possibly believe that behaving in that way is acceptable and correct. And so if you treat it like a scientific challenge and exploration, you won't let your emotions get the better of you. And maybe finally, enjoy the journey. Everyone thinks, I go to a party, it's all about enjoyment. Well, guess what? Part of the enjoyment should be the journey of meeting people, including those you don't like, including those you wouldn't want to go on a holiday with, and actually understanding them a little bit better. You don't have to like them, but you can understand them just a little bit better. So that's Gary Rowe's little tips on annoying people at Christmas. Hopefully you got something out of it. And there's a few more words along those lines in our December newsletter as well. So our next topic, disposing of old equipment. And I think our heading in our newsletter is, can we give away old equipment? So yes, it's giving away, but in reality, it's disposing of old equipment. And of course, in the workplace safety laws, they refer to plant, which today I'm just using the general word equipment. So first off, if you or I are disposing of old equipment, we have a moral duty, whether we give it away or sell it. And the law makes very little difference as to that level of duty, whether you give it away or sell it. Now, I think historically, many of us have felt, I have an old broken machine, I have an old electric fan, I have an old electric heater, I can give it away. I don't think, I know it's not right, I know it's faulty or whatever, but they'll sort it out. And if I'm giving it away, I have no duty and concern about it. Well, guess what? Morally, what you've just done is wrong, and legally, if it's in the workplace, it is wrong. We have some duties. So let's just have a look at what they are. So if you're disposing of equipment that you intend to be reused, we have in the workplace, if you're a business, your business has a duty to do a risk assessment of that piece of equipment, whatever it may be. Provide written advice on the condition of that equipment, which would be based on that risk assessment, identifying any faults. You need to provide a copy of the manufacturer's manual, if it still exists, and maintenance and service records, whatever you've got. And if the item is unsafe, you need to advise in writing something along the words, do not use until the faults are fixed, so that it's clear to whoever has received it. And now it doesn't matter whether you sold it for at a price, for a fee, or you've given it away, you still have a duty to do this. So there's second-hand equipment that you intend to be reused. And that's why a lot of charities and other organisations don't accept old electrical equipment now, because it costs them more than what they can recover in their op shop to have it checked by an electrician and made safe and certified. So what about if we're disposing of equipment and we don't intend it to be used? So we might think, no, I'm just giving away something essentially for scrap metal. So you need to advise in writing or mark on the equipment, supplied for scrap or parts only, not to be used. So this is the essence of it. So you either provide all of the information and manuals, records and risk assessment and identify the faults, or you're giving it away for scrap or selling it for scrap for whatever that value may be, and you indicate that that's the intention. That's both your moral and legal duty. So therefore, it doesn't matter if it's not technically classified as plant. That's why I've just used the word equipment. And I think we could use the same principle at home. If we have an old motor mower, if we have an old chainsaw, if we have an old electric heater or whatever, just think about morally, you're giving it away. You think, oh, well, I don't have to care too much. I'm giving it for free, so they should be thankful for whatever they get. We need to understand we should not be passing on problems that someone else may not be aware of. So disposing of old equipment, there's the two key circumstances and the things that you need to consider. So just briefly, asbestos and bushfire risks. It never occurred to me immediately when we had all of the terrible bushfires last summer that immediately what came out of it is a lot of discussion and concern, particularly from the emergency services, CFA, fire brigade, etc., about asbestos. And of course, this is absolutely correct. So building fires can create hazardous dust. We know that when we see the smoke in the air, but particularly for the cleanup workers, rescue workers, many of those buildings contained asbestos. So if you have any buildings built before 1990, typically is your key touch point. So if they're older than 1990, you might anticipate that they could contain asbestos, or you should be suspicious of that. So the key tips here: identify if asbestos is present. If in doubt, get a specialist to come and test. If it is confirmed, use licensed removalists to clean the site of asbestos before you can go in for general waste removal and other repairs. And for those when you know that asbestos, ensure the correct PPE, which is typically, there are other things, respirators and disposable overalls. And just briefly, what's come out of the COVID conditions throughout this year has been a much greater interest in respirators. So I'm not just talking about general face masks now, but respirators that actually provide a good fit around the face. And so whether it be commonly referred to as the N95 masks or respirators, they need to be fit tested. It is a lot of the tests when people advertise a respirator, they'll say, oh, our respirator meets the Australian standard or meets some other European or American standard. What they have tested is the filter medium, but not the fit around the face. So it's irrelevant how good the filter is at filtering out asbestos or other harmful contaminants, if in fact a lot of the air is leaking in around the mask and actually the person's breathing in toxic dust. So we recommend that anyone that is working around hazardous dust, that they do arrange fit testing for the operators with the respirator that they intend to use. Safety Action does fit testing of respirators, and what we've found from this is very interesting. A significant number of people present to us with the mask they've been using for some time, and it's actually failed the test. So in fact, it hasn't satisfied the fit test. And so the leakage is so significant that they're actually got people at risk. So let's just turn to another, I think, interesting subject, if I may. Oh, I'm not sure. Working near deep water. I had another friend who forwarded a procedure, and as I mentioned earlier, and said we're going to wear life jackets near deep water. You should wear life jackets near deep water. And it made me think, is that actually correct? Is that what we really need to do? And so and people said, well, even shallow water, you could fall face down, have a heart attack or an epileptic fit. But you've got to ask yourself, and in the workplace, what's the real key risk for falling in deep water? And it's none of those things that we just mentioned. It's drowning. That's the key danger of deep water. Because if you talk about someone having a heart attack, epileptic fit, or other thing, and falling in water, the key risk is not the water. It's actually responding quickly enough to anyone who has a medical episode. So they've confused deep water and medical episodes. So today I'm talking about separating the issues out. My issue is deep water. So what is deep water? So what we do know is that for swimming pools and ponds and spas at home, the legislation specifies greater than 300 millimetres deep, 30 centimetres. You've got to have a pool fence and safety gate and non-climbable fence, etc. So we understand that. But in the workplace, we don't have children. We don't have people severely disabled or the elderly who might, if they fell in even shallow water, not be able to stand up and recover themselves. So I looked up to the legislation around Australia, and there is no prescribed depth in the workplace under workplace safety laws for what is deep water. So therefore, what is a drowning risk? Yet the legislation in every state refers to high-risk construction work near water where you could drown, but they don't actually define how deep that is. So it's somewhat defective legislation. So we at Safety Action, we thought through this and we thought, well, we adopt 30 centimetres, 300 millimetres as they use for swimming pools. And the answer is no for the reasons that I've said. Any normal, fit, healthy adult who fell over in 30 centimetres of water would be able to simply stand up and be okay. And if they're not, this is a medical emergency for which you should have separately a medical and a emergency response in any event. So we've decided to use greater than 1 metre deep if there are no other hazards. So for example, if this water is flowing at an absolute rapid rate, so this is flood waters, then shallower than deep water fall in, you might be washed away and drowned. So deep water, assuming there's no other significant hazards like very rapid water speed or mechanical hazards or it's not acid that you've fallen in or some other corrosive liquid. So we're talking about maybe a normal dam, pond or something. So for the workplace, deeper than 1 metre, it's that somebody might struggle and not be able to stand up and drown. So we've just used that as our trigger point. But because it's not prescribed by law, businesses could do their own risk assessment and come up with a different answer. That's okay. We've just used this as a starting point. So safety rules for working near deep water is what we would offer to you. Number one, if you have known deep water in the work area, fence it off. That's with your normal temporary construction fence, and therefore no one would need to wear a life jacket. This idea that you put PPE first instead of last, we all know is the wrong approach in workplace safety. PPE is your last resort. So first we look at elimination, minimisation and other controls first. So here's other controls. If we fence it off, then there is no risk of people being drowned unless they naughty boys and climb our fence, and that can always happen. So we'll provide for supervision should minimise that. So if we are working near known deep water, greater than a metre, also no working alone. So if someone does fall in, we've got somebody who can actually respond and assist. Secondly, we're going to have an emergency kit. If you have known deep water, you need maybe a safety line, safety belt. Some workplaces are significant enough, they'll have a safety boat that would be able to be deployed. So you've got to think about your emergency plan. What if someone was to fall in the deep water that we have here? As I've already mentioned, caution with other risks. For example, low buoyancy. So our friends in the water treatment and water supply authorities, you may have aerated water, you may have other ways of low buoyancy water. So you think you and I can swim, guess what? Fall in a tank that's being aerated and you might just sink to the bottom no matter how hard you thrash around and try and swim because it's low buoyancy water. Mechanical hazards in whatever it is you've got there. It could be agitators or other things that you could be caught in. So you need to look out for that. And there's your last resort, life jackets, if working from a boat or over deep water. So now we've put PPE last, not as our first description. So that article in our December newsletter was to open up that question, really, and so you look at questions in the future, safety questions, say, is that the real question about life jackets, or is the real question is about what is deep water and the drowning risk? Because then your risk assessment will actually accommodate what other risks may come about with that as well. or arise out of that. Just to let you know, we provide a quarterly legislative update, as I mentioned earlier, for our retainer clients, and some people subscribe just to this service, which you could contact us if you have an interest. So the quarterly update come out for December. We do a roundup around the national laws and all the state and territories, Australia and New Zealand, with any changes to the law in the last 3 months. So that provides a key update there. Key safety standards, so they're Australian standards. There are thousands and thousands of them. So we tend to handpick the ones we think are most of interest to you, our clients and friends, that we think you might need to know about, that may have altered over the quarter. There are also so many safety prosecutions and cases, legal cases that come up over workplace injury, accidents and incidents. We try and pick out some key ones which we think are like precedent cases that actually represent maybe common risks to our key clients and readers of our newsletter. We update the key safety alerts from the authorities. So each state authority may put out alerts. It could be faulty scaffolding or foursome scaffolding, or they've had a rash of accidents involving bobcats and excavators, and what would be the key safety rules to alert you. So we feature those, and also safety recalls as advised by the authorities, and it could be pieces of equipment that are sold in the workplace. So particularly the ones we're interested in is workplace safety, so we cover those as well. So if you're interested in that, you can make inquiries, and those that are retainer clients, you'll be receiving your legislative update for the December quarter very soon. We're coming into the end of not only this year, but also the end of this webinar. So just letting you know, next February will be our next webinar update. And so the topics we've got so far is a chain barrier enough? And you can see the photograph here. So we've put no public access. We've got a chain across there. That seems eminently sensible. Is that legally enough to protect you and your business against a claim of negligence or inadequate safety or controls? Another one we've had is, well, what's a valid certificate? People come to our worksite, particularly construction worksite, and they've got competency certificates for plant equipment and for working on construction sites from other states, and some of them go back many years. So what makes a valid competency certificate, and what should we accept or not accept? Plus we'll have the latest safety news, whatever comes up between now and over the January period into February. So we've come to the end of our designated half hour. Gee, it goes very fast. So thank you for joining us and for your support throughout 2020. Been a weird year for everyone worldwide, obviously with COVID restrictions forcing many of us to move more to online platforms for communication, as we're doing right now. So stay safe, and we'll see you next year. And our next webinar is scheduled for Tuesday, the 9th of February, 2021. Well, it's the first time I've used the term 2021. So we look forward to seeing you then. Thank you once again for joining us. It's very short and sharp and quick. I'll just check on my screen here. I'm not sure, I can't see anything quick that I can respond to on the chat line, but if you have a question or inquiry or a topic you would like us to explain, feel free to email or call Safety Action. You should have all the details there from our newsletters and elsewhere. So thank you once again, and so please stay safe and see you early next year. Thank you once again. Bye.